All right, welcome back to Just Awful Sports. We have a special episode for you all tonight. It is a college football playoff episode, and the college football playoff committee came out with their final rankings of the regular season before the conference championships and before Selection Sunday. So we're just gonna get right into it in the top half of the rankings. The bottom half of the rankings, I'm not super concerned with. Syracuse, nice to see them ranked, but really it comes down to about 15, 16, and up. And I just want to say, obviously Oregon should be the 1 seed. I'm surprised that Ohio State didn't drop a little bit more down there. And my problem with some of these rankings is how inconsistent the playoff committee is on their reasoning behind each ranking for each team, depending on which teams they seem to want to get in the playoff. For example, are we really going to sit here and say that three-loss SEC teams are better than two-loss Big 12 teams who are both competing, by the way, for a Big 12 title? Are we really going to sit here and say that? Okay, let's start with who's above. Alabama, ranked at 11. Should they be ranked above Miami? Sure, yes. Miami is proven in many games this season that they should have lost multiple more games than they ended up losing, and that realistically they weren't as good as their ranking said, but they won football games, so they deserve to be ranked high until they lost these last few weeks, and so they deserve to drop. So should Alabama be ranked above them? Sure, I can argue that. But are we really going to sit here and say that Alabama should be ranked over Arizona State, ranked over Iowa State? Let's compare some resumes here. Alabama, 9-3. Arizona State, 10-2. Win in that category, Arizona State. That's another problem that I have with the college football playoff committee is the numbers in the wins and loss columns should be the most important thing when determining who gets into these playoff spots and who gets into these rankings. The win-loss column is the most objective way to look at it. You win more games than the other team, generally you should be getting in over them. There are exceptions, of course, and I can see the argument, but let's compare the loss column. Arizona State, their first Big 12 game ever on the road at Texas Tech, played very bad, especially in that first half, and managed to keep the game within a score, ended up losing 30-22. Okay, not a great loss, but by the way, Texas Tech finishes 8-4. Not a horrible loss, not a great loss, not a horrible loss. Second loss, Arizona State without quarterback Sam Leavitt. Jeff Sims, backup quarterback, starts for Arizona State, and they end up losing by 10. And the committee has shown, especially with last year with Florida State getting left out, that injuries, and it's literally on the College Football Playoff Committee's website, that injuries that can impact the team's performance throughout the season should be taken into account. So realistically, should that loss really count against Arizona State? Of course, it's a loss. But are we really going to weigh it down as any of Alabama's 3 losses? Which, by the way, Jalen Milroe was healthy for. Checks notes all of them. He was available for all of them. All right, so let's go to Alabama's 3 losses. Alabama loses to Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt. Last time I checked, Vanderbilt was 6-6. Not great. Not great. Alabama loses 24-3 at Oklahoma. Scored 3 points against that Oklahoma team that had a losing record at the time. It was, I believe, had 4 wins. So they were not very good, Oklahoma. They finished towards the bottom of the SEC. So are we really going to say that Alabama deserves to be up there? And their other losses to Tennessee. Okay, that's not a bad loss. Losing to Tennessee, not a bad loss. But and if you watch that Tennessee game, it was clear how much the distance between Tennessee and Alabama was. Really, it was pretty clear. So Alabama with 2 unranked losses to 6-6 teams versus Arizona State, who has a loss to a 8-4 team and a 5-7 team with their backup quarterback. I don't see how I understand Alabama beats Georgia, but Georgia hasn't won. Georgia hasn't looked so good themselves in recent weeks and has some some pretty bad losses as well. Let's not forget, this is a Georgia team who lost by multiple scores to Ole Miss, who also lost to Kentucky, not very good. Lost to Florida, who was not very good. Let's look at the teams that these teams have all lost to. The SEC this season, and if you're looking at this objectively, has become the Pac-12 of the previous seasons. Teams beating each other up. But my problem is that the committee sees the SEC as the big dog, and they are. They are the best conference in the country. But the committee sees the gap as this and this between the SEC and the Big 12. The gap is really this and this. The Big 12, some of these top Big 12 teams, Arizona State, Iowa State, Kansas State, BYU, Colorado, could compete in the SEC. I genuinely believe you replace them with Florida, with Kentucky, with Arkansas, they actually end up with better records. They can compete. Are we really going to sit here and say the way that these teams have been playing that Alabama is better than Arizona State, better than Iowa State right now? No, that's just not true. Same South Carolina. The only team that's a 3-loss SEC team that's playing better football than Arizona State and Iowa State right now is South Carolina, who, by the way, is eliminated from the playoff based off their ranking today, and as I think they should be. If you both have the same record, you know what the second tiebreaker should be? Head-to-head. They lost to Alabama. South Carolina's out. There's no other questions. There's no other questions there about South Carolina's resume. But for the same reason, if they're under Alabama, and I believe that Arizona State and Iowa State should both be ahead of Alabama and Ole Miss, then that's where they should be. That is not true. Just the way the committee is. The committee for the first 5 years of the college football playoff, it was the 4 most deserving teams, 4 teams who were in it. Wins have to matter, and that's what it did for a while until last year. Until last year, when the committee opened the door to put whoever they want in for whatever reasons they want, which was putting Florida State out and putting Alabama in. That opened the door to what a pathetic job that the committee has done this year in ranking teams. Oh, and by the way, let's look at the Arizona State and Iowa State's rankings versus SMU and Boise State. All right, so let's start with SMU. SMU's only lost BYU. You know who beat BYU? Arizona State. And guess who's in the same conference? Iowa State. Both of them, by the way, finished ahead of BYU in the conference standings. So, if we're really gonna look at this, are we really gonna sit here and say that this one-loss SMU team who plays bums in the ACC is better than Arizona State, or is 6 spots better than Arizona State? Are we really gonna say that? 7 spots better than Iowa State? Are we really gonna say that? And then Clemson, a 3-loss Clemson team, who, by the way, it's pretty clear based off the way the committee has done things this year, that if Clemson beats SMU, a 3-loss Clemson team will get in over a 2-loss Big 12 championship team, whether it be Iowa State or whether it be Arizona State. Either one of those teams will likely get jumped by Clemson for that 4th spot for a bye in the college football playoff. That is, again, 2 losses. Less than 3 losses. And that's the only thing the committee should have to look at when it comes to deciding that 4th spot if Clemson is able to beat SMU. And then let's compare to Boise State real quick. Boise State, great story. Ashton Jeanty should be the Heisman winner, in my opinion, other than Cam Scatterboot. Cam Scatterboot of Arizona State should get a lot more Heisman love than he is. So, that's my thought. But are we Boise State? Their only loss is a very good loss, losing a very close one to the number 1 team in the country. Great. If we're going to use the committee's logic, the committee's own logic, what good wins do they have? None. They have 0 good wins. They have a win against the UNLV team, who's now ranked 23rd, who they're going to get a rematch against this week. Are we really going to say Boise State is 5 spots better than Arizona State? 5 spots better, 6 spots better than Iowa State? Are we really still making that argument? Because that's just not true. Just like I think Ohio State should have dropped more. 2 losses, just saying they have the same record as Arizona State. They have the same record as Iowa State. That's the same record that two teams who are, again, competing for a conference championship. Something, again, Ohio State is not doing this year. Not competing for a conference championship. Sure, you can argue the Big Ten is better, and it is. But are we really going to say that Ohio State's second loss is not as bad, if not worse, than one of Arizona State's loss? Ohio State should be above Arizona State and Iowa State, but are we really going to say that their second loss was better than any of the losses, either one of the losses that either one of those two teams have? No, it's just not true. They lost to a very bad Michigan team. That Michigan team is no good. If you watch them all season, they were no good, and yet they had their especially that defense had their way with Ohio State on Saturday, and so Ohio State moves down. I think 3 spot. Really? That's it. I understand their only other loss was to Oregon on the road, in a game that they could have won if they just managed the clock a little bit. But so they should be still highly ranked. But come on, are we really going to say that they're that much better than all these teams? I mean, come on. You should have to earn your ranking. It's not just whoever the committee should think based off what they watch, who are the best 12 teams. It's not the best 12. It's the best 12 teams this year who have earned it. You have to earn it. I'm sorry. Winning football games has to freaking matter. And that's my problem with this committee, is that it never matters. It hasn't mattered for a long time for this committee. And I almost miss the BCS days. As bad, as much of a shit show as that was, I miss the BCS days because at least then winning mattered. And so that's my thoughts on the college football playoff rankings, is that winning has to matter, and the way the committee has done it this year is just not good. And so that wraps up today's episode of Just Awful Sports. If you have any fantasy questions or start just questions for tomorrow's episode with Andrew Fredericks and Jeff Capus, you can email us at justawfulsports. That's just AWFFL sports @gmail.com. And I'll see you guys next week.